Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of not Top 5 Weekly, which you're used to seeing us on, but this is a special series of videos we are doing, and these are the 52 must-see films and why they matter. And it's all based on this book here. I don't know if you can see it, but this book here that is put out by TCM. It is written by Jeremy Arnold with a foreword by Robert Osborne. And the reason why we are doing this series is because the late Robert Osborne was the longtime host at TCM. And if you are a cinephile, specifically of classic movies, you know who he is and you realize that he was much beloved amongst our community. So we decided to honor him by doing a separate video for each film in this essential list and kind of the reasons why we believe they are essential. If you want to know why the author in this book thought it was essential, then get your hands on it. But in this video, we are going to be talking about Charlie Chaplin's City Lights from 1931. And if you are familiar with film history in any way, you know that Charlie Chaplin is a gigantic name. He is not only a star of the silent era, but I would say a all-time star. He kind of revolutionized film and filmmaking and became very much a global iconic figure. So, and along with me is my good friend, Stephen Billings. Stephen, introduce yourself.
Well, hello. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, we've had a lot of time to talk about movies, doing Top 5 Weekly, and even in off hours. And now we're getting a chance to dig into one movie at a time. And rewatching this film, it's just a delight. And I can see why it's on this list. It's definitely an essential film. I think anybody should watch. And let's not waste any time. Let's get down to it.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to start off discussing why we think it's essential. And I think it's essential, like I just said, because of Charlie Chaplin, because he is this iconic figure, because he's so important to film history. And City Lights is one of his most beloved films, as well as other films he did all around the same time. Things like Gold Rush, The Circus, The Kid, which he did earlier. And then, of course, afterward, he did Modern Times and The Great Dictator. But this is City Lights, and what this film is about. If you're not familiar with it, we are going to spoil the plot in this. We can't go really into detail without spoiling things. But if you don't care about spoilers from movies that are, 90 years old by this point,
don't know what to do for you guys.
Yeah. Essentially, it is Charlie Chaplin reprising one of his most iconic roles in the Tramp, who is this kind of poor but genuine soul who kind of wanders around town. But in this specific story, he is smitten by a blind flower girl, and this whole film is essentially a romantic comedy of him trying to essentially engrace himself with her, trying to build up this kind of reputation as a wealthy person that he wants to have, because he thinks that if she figures out that he's not a wealthy person, she's not going to like him. And there are so much themes. There are so many themes in this film that are concurrent with modern day films that it's kind of amazing that this film came out in 1931.
Yeah, and along with that, it really kind of it shows to me, going into the essentials, it really is like the stamp of like physical comedy. Like, it really is one of the most influential physical comedy movies I've ever seen, because there's so many things I've seen in the movie when it comes to like the suicide scene, where dude's trying to commit suicide, he saves him, and then he pulls him in, and he's trying to get out, he pulls him back out, like it just stuff like that, and which the other character in the movie, played by Harry Myers, who's the eccentric billionaire, is kind of what leads the Tramp down this path to trying to help this girl. And, he tries to, it's a sweet movie.
It's amazing what he's able to do with just tonal shifts and thematic shifts in the movie. Like you were saying, he comes upon this guy it's late at night. He's the Tramp, so he's wandering around town. He probably has no place to live. And he goes down by this river, I assume, or these banks. And this drunk rich man's trying to commit suicide. And initially, you're like, wow, this guy's just going to commit suicide. And the Tramp's sitting there, and you're like, Is somebody going to stop him? What's going to happen? And of course, the tramp does stop him, but it turns into a brilliant scene of physical comedy that you're not quite sure you're supposed to laugh, but you end up laughing because it's so absurd.
Yeah, and that's what's brilliant, and it's the thing I always tell people about comedy, and even drama sometimes too, is that you can really, the best type of comedies are when you can set it off with darkness, because a lot of comedy comes from a dark place. So when you start out with this dark thing, which is somebody about to commit suicide, and then it turns into a comedy bit, you went from one end of the spectrum of your emotions to another, and that's what gives you that thrill. You start in one place and then you go to another place.
Yeah,
and that's why it's great comedy.
Yeah, and it happens again. You see afterward, this drunk guy takes Charlie Chaplin's character back to his house, and you see that he has this mansion. Like, this guy's probably like equivalent today of like a billionaire or whatever, like a really wealthy dude. And it's amazing that this guy wants to commit suicide, and he seemingly has everything in the world, while the tramp has nothing in the world and is so full of life. And there's another scene there where he tries to shoot himself, which is played for comedy once again, which is so damn brilliant. And it's so exquisitely well done technically. If you are familiar with the technical aspects of filmmaking, you're watching this, and a lot of these physical comedic performances are really elaborate, and you're watching it, and they're all done in one shot. They're all done in master shots. There's hardly any cuts in them at all. So you realize that he must have done this so many damn times to get this so perfect, because they go on for a while. These are multi-minute comedic physical performances.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely one of the big things that I took away from the movie, is that you had to be so prepared, as it, not only because Chaplin directed, wrote, starred, probably produced, probably put some of his own money into it, I'm sure. Like, he did everything in this movie. And then the one scene that stands out to me is when him and the eccentric millionaire go to that ball, and they're in there and they're sitting at the table, and it's one shot, and they're at the table and he's smoking a cigar, as you can see behind me right there. And then everybody's dancing. It pans back, and the tramp goes in, starts dancing with people, and like, it's all one shot. It's like, you're like, man, this was planned out fabulously.
Yeah, and I mean, just another sequence of that is later on in the film. He realizes that this flower girl, who's also very poor, needs money to pay rent, or else she's gonna be homeless. And he decides to make some quick money by boxing. And the fight sequences in the film are all like one takes, and they're elaborate. Like, and there's multiple people moving around. It's one thing when it's just the tramp going off and doing his comedic stuff, but when it's like multiple people bouncing around the ring, and there's punches thrown, and then there's there's ducks and moves side to side. It's incredibly elaborate. It's just amazing how much he was able to do in the 19 teens, the 1920s, 1930s, and on, and so far and onward in his career, especially at the time where film was extremely expensive and the cameras were very, very big and not very mobile. So you wonder, like, man, how much time did it take, and how much film did he have to use? How much feet of reel is there? And I know this film particularly took him about 3 years to make. It's his most lengthy production on any film, and apparently he wanted it done so perfectly that he did the scene where he meets the flower girl for the first time. She's blind. He doesn't, and the tramp doesn't realize it. Apparently he did it over 300 times just to get it perfect. Like, I read that and I was like, is that a typo? What is that? That is insane.
That really was like 30 times, right? No?
Yeah, it's like, that makes Kubrick's shots in The Shining, or takes in The Shining, look minuscule in comparison. It's just an amazing film. And what really strikes me when I first watched the film, when I rewatched the film, is the richness of themes. It's not only a romantic film, but it's also a film that is discussing society specifically at that time. Because in the late 1920s, we know we have the stock market crash, we have the Great Depression, and a lot of people who once had money don't have money anymore, and kind of a lot of people who were rich were responsible for it. So this film kind of pokes fun at, not even pokes fun, but it's kind of critical of the rich class. And there's a scene towards the end of the film, which I thought was extremely telling, where the tramp has been put in prison due to, you know, some shenanigans where the rich man believes that the tramp had stolen money from him, or the police
Yeah,
believe it.
the big thing throughout the movie is that whenever the millionaire is drunk, he remembers the tramp, but then
Yeah,
when he's sobered up, he forgets about him and then just
yeah.
picks him out of the house. Or
He's going along with what I was saying. It's just like the rich people can't even view the poor people in a normal way unless they're impaired, unless they're drunk,
yeah,
unless their mind is so screwed up that they can finally look at these people as friends and equals.
yeah, and it
When
plays into
in reality, they can't or they won't.
yeah, it plays into that theme of like, where does real value lie?
Yeah,
And in this, when it comes to him and the blind girl, and when we get to that end scene, which is kind of one of the big things
yeah.
of this movie.
That's what I was talking about, was when he gets out of prison and his clothes are just disheveled. He's got holes in all of them, and the newspaper kids are making fun of him. They're throwing spitballs at him. They're laughing at him. Everybody's seemingly laughing at him, and all these kind of wealthy people, well dressed, just walk by him as if he's invisible, as if he doesn't exist. And that's a problem that happens today, where the poor are ignored, the impoverished are ignored, and that was something that was the case in 1931 as well, which is really interesting. And there's a whole through line throughout the film, like I said earlier, where the tramp wants to be seen as wealthy because he thinks that's the only way this blind girl would accept him, is if she knew that. And she doesn't really care if he's wealthy or not. She just cares about um, his quality of character.
Yeah, his kindness, not only, even she didn't ultimately care about, that he was helping out with rent and things like that. She just knew how kind he was to her. And then, yeah, that last scene is just heartbreaking, where she's not only is the tramp getting money for her rent, but to help her cure her blindness.
Yeah,
And,
he's so selfless.
yeah, and at the end,
And he wants to give so much.
yeah, and at the end, she's gotten that surgery or whatever, and is seeing him for the first time, not knowing it's him, and she's being so nice to him, and he knows it's her, and then eventually she realizes it, and it's just, and she gives her the flower just like he gave her the flower, or took the flower before. It's just really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and there's one sequence in the film where the blind flower girl is sick or whatever, and she needs medical care, but she can't afford it, obviously. So he takes a job as essentially a street cleaner, and not a street cleaner like we see today. No, because there are horses, and there are horses ridden on horseback walking around seemingly, this metropolis, and he basically has to shovel horse crap, essentially, for lack of a better term. He has to pick up horse manure, horse feces, whatever you want to call it. He has to shovel crap to help this blind girl get well. And I mean, this man is like super selfless.
Yeah, but it does have some really, just off the wall comedy bits throughout it too, that really set off that sweetness.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's with the millionaire. Then their shenanigans throughout the night.
Oh yeah, when they're out at partying at night, it's just some just crazy sequences. Like we were talking about that whole ball sequence, or that sequence at that restaurant with the dancing, whatever. When he's eating the spaghetti and like the streamer's floating around, and he starts eating the streamer, he just doesn't stop eating the streamer. It's hilarious. And when he just starts dancing with that woman and her husband standing right there, but he's so drunk he doesn't realize it. It's just hilarious to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that to me, other than the physical comedy, like we've been talking about, the big essential thing about this is it's like you said, a theme that is timeless. It's a movie that has timeless things, about the rich and the poor, and things that are still happening today, and it's still relevant, You can still watch it, get stuff from it, and learn and take it into the world, and use it.
And it's also very interesting that it's a silent film, in 1931, if you're not familiar with, film history or anything like that, basically by this point, talkies were starting to become normal. I mean, the silent era was kind of not dead, but dying, if you will. And Charlie Chaplin was one of those who didn't want to make the transition, and he was still making silent films in the 1930s. And you'll see that subsequently in his film Modern Times. But in this film, at the beginning, he has people talk, and when they talk, it's just gibberish because it was kind of him kind of taking a jab at talkie films. Like, we don't need talkie films. Yeah, it was like every adult you ever heard in a Peanuts animated film or animated special. They're just nonsense. You don't need to hear them. And what is interesting is he's able to get his story across. He's able to get the emotion across, and he's able to make a timeless film in it as a silent film in a talkie era, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And it still works today. If you're not a fan of silent film, or if you're wary about silent film, watch Chaplin's films because they are so easily transferable to today with their stories and their themes, like Stephen was saying.
Yeah, it's definitely one. If you had to rank this as like your favorite, where does this land in your Chaplin? As your favorites.
I'd say it's top five for me. I mean, I've seen a bunch of Chaplin. I've seen most of his major stuff. He did a lot of early shorts, but it's definitely top five for me. But this film really combines a lot of the best of Chaplin with the physical comedy, with the social commentary, with the romance aspect of it. It's really kind of a greatest hits of Charlie Chaplin films poured into one. And that's why I think they put it in this book, because it is the best of Chaplin.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely a must see, guys. It's definitely deserves to be in this book. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to hit on with it, or?
Couple of interesting tidbits about it is that apparently Charlie Chaplin was a perfectionist, like I had just mentioned, but apparently there was one point during the production where he had actually fired the flower girl that we know now, the actress, and then he had shot some scenes with another actress. But then he realized that he had already shot most of the movie with this other actress, so he decided, yeah, I have to finish the film with her, or else I can't reshoot the whole movie. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of incredible when you think about it. Because
I hope she didn't know about that. Like,
yeah, and
gotta make her feel bad a little bit.
yeah, the girl, the actress Virginia Cheryl, I believe, was her name. This was, I believe, her first movie, so she was very young. She was only about 20 years old. Apparently, this is actually Charlie Chaplin's personal favorite of all his films. Apparently, this is a favorite film of a lot of other people, like Orson Welles, who is one of my favorite, people in film of all time. And what is interesting is apparently Albert Einstein went to the Los Angeles premiere of this film, which is really, really kind of amazing when you put these two kind of iconic cultural people in the same place together and realize they were in the same world at the same time. It's kind of just
kind of makes you want to see a Chaplin
yeah.
Einstein team up movie.
Yeah, apparently, I mean, there's so much information about Charlie Chaplin and about the making of his films because we've been because it's been so many years since then, and he's such an interesting guy. Um, just I highly recommend watching Chaplin films, not only this film, but definitely his silent films. And then when he makes a transition to talkies, they are just as good, which is kind of amazing because a lot of people weren't able to make that transition. A lot of silent era stars couldn't become talkie stars. A lot of people who worked in silent films couldn't make the transition to talkies, and Chaplin was able to do that so seamlessly. He was just truly one of a kind.
Most definitely. That's why a lot of dudes at directors' chairs say Chaplin, or they have don't they have a line of something in film that says Chaplin on it all the time? Even to the day.
I think you're right. Yes.
I think it's like like cranes. A lot of the cranes.
Yeah.
Chaplin on them or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, just as an influence on film production, I think is astounding. And like you were saying, modern comedies wouldn't be the same without Charlie Chaplin.
No, anything Jim Carrey did, all that physical comedy Jim Carrey does, and how old's the Three Stooges? What about the Three Stooges? Like,
Yeah, the Three Stooges were around the same time.
yeah,
I want to say like 1930, 1940s,
yeah,
maybe 50s. I should actually look that up. But yeah, you wouldn't have a lot of modern comedy. And he wasn't the only one at the time. I mean, he had contemporaries, specifically Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd. Chaplin is my favorite amongst them. There's, I guess, a lot of debate, who was the best or who do you prefer? And I'm just like, you can love them all. You don't have to pick and choose. I mean,
it's
all of them
subjective, guys.
offer something great, but I think Chaplin just transcended time so seamlessly.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
that has been our episode for the City Lights. I mean, we could go on and on about this seemingly for a while. We could dig deeper and deeper, but this was a nice overview of why this film is so essential, why this film is indeed in this book, which, if you're really interested in, I highly recommend it. If you're a cinephile, if you're a fan of classic movies, or if you're just curious, yeah, I mean, just check it out. Check out all the films in here. This is a good essential list in all. And you're going to see me, you're going to see Steven, you're going to see Dan, as well as a bunch of other of our friends in these videos that are going to come out. We are not doing these in any specific order, basically in the order in which we filmed them, essentially. So if you like this one, check out the others and go and watch the movies and then watch our reviews. Anything else you want to say, Steven?
Just I guess watch out for this on Best Damn Movie Show channel is where it's going to be at. And my stuff, if you want to know anything about me, Film Club Central. Andrew's got his page. What's your page?
My page is Capzilla Productions, where I do movie reviews and stuff like that. So we're all movie people here. So, and if you're a movie fan, I think you'll like the stuff that we're going to be putting out.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next one.